Okay, good afternoon. This is Tim Lee here from Amplified IT. We're going to be starting broadcasting just very shortly and starting this webinar on CAS for Education. So what we're going to do is we're just going to wait a minute or two just for others to join us before we do start. So hopefully we are live. Just to remember as well, within the actual Hangout on Air, there is a Q&A section that you can go and click on if you'd like to go and click on that, put in your questions throughout this time and throughout the webinar. What we will be doing is going back and answering those as we go through, but mostly at the end we've got Q&A section that we'll be jumping to. So again, we're going to leave it about a minute or two before we do start, and hopefully what you're going to be able to see is the slide deck here that Max is going to be presenting. So again, we're just going to start in about a minute or so. So welcome to the webinar, and we'll get started shortly. Again, for those of you who just joined us, we're just going to be waiting a minute or two before we start the actual Hangout on Air. This is going to be recorded, so we are going to be publishing it afterwards on YouTube, and so you will be able to watch the recording, stop, rewind as much as you want, and also share it with others. Again, this is really important for us when we're kind of moving into the next school year, seeing what CAS for Education can do, and that's going to be really exciting. So again, glad to be on here. My name's Tim Lee, and we're going to be starting shortly. Okay, so I'm going to give it about another 30 seconds, and then we'll get underway. So those of you who have just joined us, what we are going to be doing is just walking through this Hangout on Air and walking through CAS for Education, what it can do for your school. Just as a reminder, there is the Q&A section that you can go and click on and submit questions. And if anyone wants to do that now, it's just on the top of the Hangout on Air, where you can actually go and submit those kind of questions for us. And what we will do is, once we get down to that section, I'll ensure that people have a walkthrough of how to do that, if you're not comfortable with Hangouts on Air as yet. But Max, why don't we get started? Now that it's about 3 minutes past, I can see that we've got quite a number of viewers on here. So a quick introduction. My name is Tim Lee. I'm the Chief Technology Officer for Amplified IT. And as you can probably tell from the accent, originally from Scotland, but the main thing is been in the US for quite some time now, helping schools moving forward with Google Apps. So a little bit about Amplified IT, and just to get this plug in here, our approach is to try and drive adoption of Google Apps, making sure that you've got that roadmap or an actionable roadmap as you kind of move forward. There's various different services I'm sure that we've worked with you guys or some of you on, whether it's our audit service or getting schools started with our Kickstart services, or building collaboratives where we're sharing best practices together and building community. But we do have a full suite of services that we do offer schools to kind of move them forward. And the latest addition is obviously Andrew Stillman with Amplified Labs piece, which they're actually building tools and some really unique tools to drive people forward with Google Apps. So today what we do have is the program manager and also the project manager from Google going to explain about CAS for Education. So what I'm going to do is just pass over to Max, maybe to take it from here and give you guys a little bit of background about CAS for Education. Please do submit any questions through the Q&A feature of the Hangout on Air throughout this. But then at the end of this, we're going to be talking about what you really need to do to move forward. So over to you, Max.
All right, thanks very much. Hi, everybody. I'm Max. I am the voice behind the slides for now, but I'll see you during the Q&A. And I'm the product manager for a brand new product we just launched called Google CAS for Education. So CAS for Education came out about, I think, about 17 days ago now. So just pretty fresh, and we'd love to tell you more about what it is, why we started working on it at Google, and then talk to you about any questions that you have in terms of how to get started or how you might use this in your classrooms. So just to get started, I think that the reason that we kind kind of came to Cast for Education is that we have noticed that the classroom has been changing quite a bit in the last few years. And I think just a couple of years it would have been unheard of that every student would actually have a computer at their desk. And with the success of Chromebooks in education, I think that that's become a reality for a lot of different school districts, which is exciting because I think it opens up a lot of different styles of teaching and learning in the classroom, because you can have more group projects, more collaboration, and that's what we hear from teachers, at least in terms of why they like to have devices there. But despite these changes, a lot has also still stayed the same, of course. And I think one of the kind of awkward moments that we keep hearing about from teachers is that even though you're in this classroom with students who are working all over the place, it's very fluid, there are lots of kind of collaborative things going on, when the teacher wants to present something to the class, the teacher gets back up to the front of the room and kind of turns his or her back on the students. And this is obviously not something that the teacher is trying to do, but it's the constraint of the technology that's available in terms of classroom projectors. And at Google, we feel that we can do a lot to help improve the tools and give teachers more and better tools to kind of help them with their regular lesson plans. And what we hear over and over again from teachers is that they want to be with their students, of course. You don't want to be just at the front of the room, standing at the podium or behind your desk. You actually want to be working with your students, and you want to be helping them one-on-one or in small groups to learn, and that's kind of the way of the modern classroom. Now, another thing that we hear from teachers all the time is that the projector at the front of the room is actually one of the most used devices in the classroom. So when you think about the different lesson plans you might have, obviously the tools and the techniques and the content is going to be customized depending on the lesson, but the one constant seems to be that there's always something to show on the front of the board. So even if it's not a presentation that you're giving to the students, it might be assignment instructions, or it might be a rubric, or it might be a YouTube video. And so we've heard over and over again that this device at the front of the room is actually one of the most commonly used screens in the classroom, even though we don't really talk about it that much, and it hasn't really changed that much recently. And at Google, we kind of challenged ourselves to ask the question, how can we share this most used device with the students? Why is this something that only the teacher has access to? Our view is there's no good reason. We should be able to, open this up within the constraints that the teachers set to make it available to kids. And so all of this kind of led us to Google Cast for Education, which is a brand new app, as I said, that we launched about 17 days ago. And the reason why Cast for Education is an app instead of a device is because, one, we heard from teachers that they don't necessarily want to buy another device to plug into the projector. And two, they want to just be able to get started, right? There's no reason why you should be fumbling with cables or switching inputs or anything like that. It'd be nice if you could just use the computer that you already have connected to your projector, but still be able to kind of open that up to the rest of your classroom. So to make this a little bit more concrete, I'm going to walk through a few screenshots here of how Cast for Education actually works. And then we're going to, I'll invite Marta to talk about what we've seen from some of our pilot schools who have tried out Cast for Education already. So as I mentioned, Cast for Education is a Chrome app, so it's just something that you can download from the Chrome Web Store. And for the admins out there, you can, of course, push it out through the Google Admin Console, which we'll talk about later. You can also block it from certain organizational units if you want to. It's just a regular old Chrome app. But what's nice about it is that it basically turns the teacher's computer into a Cast receiver. And so what I mean by that is the teacher's computer, they open up this app, and they've got this little window on their computer that students can share their screens into. But unlike devices like a Chromecast, for instance, or some of the other streaming devices out there, it's not based on your Wi-Fi network. So even if you're on a different Wi-Fi network from your students, they'll still be able to share their screens. And the way that that works is just through your Google account. So like many services that Google provides, all of the sharing takes place through your Google account. And so just like you might share a doc with your kids or with a group, you can also share the Cast for Education app with your kids as well. Now another thing that you're going to see if you squint really closely on this screenshot is that you can also share to Google Classrooms. So if a school is using Google Classroom classes, it's even easier to get started because you can just add all of your kids at once through the Google Classroom class. If you don't have Classroom, no worries though, it still works for individuals and for Google Groups. So to recap here, what you're seeing is on the teacher's computer, they're running the Cast for Education app. Now I'm going to show you on the student's computer how they're going to initiate screen sharing. And the way that they do that is through the normal Google Cast feature that's built into Chrome. And so the student will just be able to open up Google Cast. And so keeping in mind this is different from the Cast for Education app. This is just a feature that's built into Chrome. And if they've been shared on the Cast app, they'll be able to see that the teacher's computer is online and active, and they'll be able to cast to it. So if one of your students finds something that they want to share to the class, you might ask them to present to the rest of the class. Now, as we heard from many teachers, you don't necessarily want all of your students to be able to cast anything at any time, of course. And so we've also built in a feature that lets you as a teacher see who is requesting to cast at any given time, and actually accept or reject each individual time that they want to cast. So this is optional, but if as a teacher you want to have a little bit more control over who has access to the front of the room, you can do that, and you can actually see ahead of time who wants to cast. Now, of course, if I were to click Accept here, the student's screen would then start showing within the app, right where you see 925. And so what's nice about this being an app is, again, one, we haven't added any new hardware to this equation. This is just running on your existing computer. And two, you can just drag it around your screen. You can make it full screen if you like. You can close out of it, of course, if you don't want it for a particular time or for a particular lesson. And it's just a regular Chrome app that you might be used to using in the classroom. So to kind of put this all together, the way this is working is that the student is sharing their screen to the teacher's computer, and then the teacher's computer is still connected to the projector in whichever way it's connected today. So nothing fancy there between the teacher's computer and the projector, but we've now opened it up so that the rest of the students in the class can have access as well. And so, kind of to summarize, a lot of people ask us about price. What's the price for this? Well, the price is free, and so we hope that's a price that works for as many people as possible. But we really want to make this available so that kids can have the opportunity to kind of participate more in class, to be leaders, to be presenters, not just to be learners kind of in the back of the room. And so with Cast for Education, you can do video and audio wirelessly, no new hardware, again. Teachers are inviting students and having control over that. And then it's also integrated with Google Classroom if you're already a Classroom user. So that's a really quick overview of the Cast for Education product. We will take all of your questions after this, but first I just want to turn it over to Marta to talk a little bit about what we've been hearing from some schools who have piloted Cast for Education already.
Thanks, Max. So hi everybody, my name is Marta McAllister. I'm a former classroom teacher, current program manager that works on Cast for Education with Max. And I had the privilege of running our classroom pilots for Cast for Education over the past 6+ months or so. So we piloted Google Cast for Education across the world in various countries with about 25+ school sites. And we got lots and lots of different examples of how this is great and lots of productive feedback on how to make the product better. I just want to make a quick plug before I share some of the stories that we heard from our pilot sites to please also share your feedback. While we can't pilot with every single school out there, we can hear from you directly via the Send Feedback button that's in the Cast extension and in the Chrome app itself. So we really hope to hear from your feedback there. Max and I, in fact, spent 2 hours yesterday going through all the feedback we've gotten just since ISTE alone, since this launched. So we really do take that feedback seriously, and it directly informs how we build the product and what we improve. With that, I'll focus a little bit first on this quote here on the page. So Erin Turnbach was a teacher we worked with in New Jersey, second grade teacher, and she actually, funnily enough, worked with students on a project with frogs, which if you've watched the animated video for our product, it was actually just a coincidence that we focus on a project on frogs as well, but we were quite excited that it matched. And she really highlighted the key functionality around students building off of each other's ideas and students taking ownership over their own learning. So she had lots of different kids at different levels, and when a student that had a stronger understanding of a particular concept or theme was willing, they could cast their screen and teach a small group of students, while Erin could circulate and work with other students in the back of the room. And she called this co-teaching with her second graders. In fact, we have a little bit more information on Erin on the blog post we posted the day we launched Google Cast for Education if you want to learn more about her class. Another class that we really enjoyed working with was out in Washington State. And this teacher, Bob, was a math teacher. He's an elementary school teacher, but his focus was really around math. And I particularly related to his experience using this tool because as a former math teacher myself, you have a lot of scenarios in the classroom where you waste a lot of class time calling students to the front of the room to show their work on the board, especially if you're going through a particular problem that most kids kind of got tripped up by or there was a common misunderstanding. So instead of having to have each student come to the front of the class or Bob having to try to figure out how to pull up students' work on his own device, he could have students use CAST as an alternative to raising their hand and in live real time cast and demonstrate and show their work for a problem they were trying to solve. We've heard lots and lots of different examples like these two, and I'll just share one more before we open it up for questions. We worked with another teacher out in Benicia, California, who is a middle school literature teacher. She was teaching the things they carried. And one of the other really nice things about CAST for Education is that it allows students to participate and collaborate in a way that's not as traditional in the classroom. So if you have students that are shyer and don't have the courage to raise their hand or speak out and come to the front of the room, CAST gives them an alternative to demonstrate mastery and understanding. And it also gives them a chance to showcase a different interpretation of an assignment. So in this particular assignment in California, they were trying to use imagery to evoke emotion based on the themes of the things they carried. And one student found a third-party tool that allowed him to overlay images on top of each other to create a new image. And he had overlaid the image of a soldier from today with a soldier from decades ago. And once he casted that up to the front of the room, a lot of kids sort of had an aha moment where they realized, oh, I didn't know that was an option. I didn't know we could do that. What's the name of that tool? And all of a sudden it raises all the other students' interpretation of the assignment and understanding, and the realm of possibilities increases for everyone. So CAST for Education, while it's a really nice little gadget in your browser on the laptop, also really inspires a lot of student-driven learning. So we're really excited to hear even more wonderful stories from everyone about how you use Google CAST for Education. But first, I'm sure you have a lot of hard-hitting questions about how it works and maybe some limitations of the tool. So we'll leave a majority of the time of this hangout to answer those questions for you.
So within the actual feature on the Hangout on Air, there is actually a Q&A feature, so you can submit questions. I see that we've got quite a few of those coming in. What I wanted to do first is, Max, there's a lot of frequently asked questions that that we could maybe start with, and maybe the most basic of questions we can talk about is how to get started with the beta, or what stage is the Chrome Google Cast for Education in? And I think, Max, do you want to walk through the slide that we're showing on here?
Yeah, sure. So I think that this word beta has gotten a lot of people to ask us questions about exactly what that means. So we'll tell you exactly what it means. So Cast for Education is a Chrome app that the teacher will download on their computer. And that Chrome app is available today. In fact, it's been available for the last 2.5 weeks. So I encourage you to download it and try it out today. So there's nothing beta about the app. What's new, though, is that when I was showing what the student sees, on the student side, they're using the next version, basically, of the Google Cast extension. So currently, you have to download a Chrome extension from the Chrome Web Store called Google Cast. And this is what you would use if maybe in your living room at home you have a Chromecast device. This is what you would use from Chrome to share your screen to the Chromecast. And so what's happening is in the next version of Chrome, that tool is actually being built into Chrome. So you won't need to download anything special. We still encourage it because it will give you a little shortcut to get into that experience. But that next version of Chrome is what's going to be kind of required to use the Cast for Education app. And so this is available today to try out. It just takes a few extra steps, which is what we have laid out at g.co/cast4edu. And then in the next couple of weeks, you're going to see the next version of Chrome rolling out to everybody. And then it'll just be available, and you won't have to take any extra steps to get started. But what we encourage you to do is, I know it's probably summer months for many of you, and you might not be at full throttle in terms of all of the different activities in your schools. So we encourage you to try it out today, right? Try it out on your computer. You can even try it by yourself. You don't need anybody else. and see how it works and get comfortable with the sharing and how that all works. And then within the next few weeks, this is going to be available to everyone by default without having to go through the extra steps. But again, all of this is laid out at ge.co/cast4edu. So I encourage you to start there, and that'll walk you through how to get started.
So the main thing as well, just to mention, is the version of Chrome. The version of Chrome you have is really important, and that's that actual stage one, where we're talking about just checking your version of Chrome, and then also there is a flag that, and that's what Max is talking about there, a little bit of a step that you need to take. It's very easy to do, but what you've got to remember is this is for your pilot before you go back to school. You won't need to make that change once you're back at school, because hopefully that new version of Chrome's rolled out, and you won't need to make that change within the browser itself of that flag. The other thing is, when you do go back to school, ensuring that your Chrome browser version, is updated. And a lot of people within their admin console, or your admins yourselves, have restricted the version of Chrome. So just ensuring that, for everyone to get this feature, they need to have the latest version of Chrome. And you can look at the reports within the admin console to make sure that that's happening. But we have a lot of other questions, that have come in. But Max, one of the other frequently asked questions is, how is this different than a Chromecast? I know that's one you've heard many times. So I don't know if you want to just address that one.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, how's this different from a Chromecast? It's different in a lot of ways. A lot of good ways, we think, at least in terms of how you'll use it in a classroom. So first of all, the Chromecast is a great device, but it's a piece of hardware that you buy. I have one in my living room at home. They're great tools. But Cast for Education is actually just an app that you download. So there's no hardware that you have to buy. In fact, there's nothing that you have to buy because it's free. And so you can just download and try it out. Another major difference is that all of the sharing happens based on the accounts that you put in. So just because your students might be on the same Wi-Fi network as you, that doesn't mean that every student in the school is going to be able to see your Cast for Education app. Only the students who you have shared on it. And so we've heard from teachers that that's a really big deal in the class. You definitely don't want a student just from next door to start playing pranks on you. You want to be able to control who has access and when. And so all of the sharing is done by your account. Now conversely, if your students are not on the same network, so your students might be on a different network, it will still work just fine. So you don't have to be on the same network. And in fact, Marta and I work on different coasts of the United States. Marta's in the Boston metro area, and I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area, and we cast to each other back and forth all the time, and it works great. So you don't even necessarily have to be within the same city or state. It should just work. And so hopefully that'll make it even easier to get started in the classroom. But I would say those are the two major differences between this and Chromecast.
So just a reminder to everyone, if you wanted to go and ask put in some questions on the Q&A, feel free to do that now. And why don't we address some of these? And I know that we've got a lot of other questions that we've actually taken before this Hangout on Air started. But maybe looking at David Jones, he asked any plans to launch on Android. And I think that maybe I could extend that Android and iOS, because I know that that's another question that people might have.
Yeah, great question. Yeah, this is something that we're looking into a lot right now. We don't have a timeline for this yet, but it's definitely something that we've heard from a bunch of different teachers. You might be wanting to cast from your personal device or from devices that students might have. So this is definitely something we're going to look into. For now, the initial launch is just focused on Chromebooks and the Chrome browser, but that also includes MacBooks and Windows devices as well. So you as a teacher, if you want to run this on your old Windows desktop, you can do that too. Or if you have a MacBook that you carry around class, you can do that as well. So this will work on Windows, Mac, and of course what we prefer is Chromebooks. But any of those devices will work fine. And we're looking into supporting mobile now.
And just as a quick thing, I think a lot of other people do suggest Chromebooks too. So jumping on to another question there, Eric, a big shout out to Eric there. Eric's actually just said, how does the stream work? Does it go out to Google and back or directly? So how does the technology work in some ways?
Yeah, great question. So, briefly, I think the most important part to understand is that it will try to do the best thing possible. So if it's possible to connect over your local network, it'll just go through your local network, and it won't have to consume any of your internet bandwidth. If for some reason it can't go through your local network, say you've firewalled things off from each other, then it will go through, basically just relay through Google to pass the video stream back down. So it will find a way to make the stream work. And what we've heard is that the reliability is really the key factor there. So hopefully you'll find that this is optimized to basically use as little bandwidth of yours as possible, but still work regardless of what setup you have.
Awesome. I'm going to maybe point this towards Marta. I mean, I think the question was from Sean Joyce said it looks very useful. Were there any higher eds in the pilot, or is it really designed around K-12?
Yeah, so we, just by coincidence, we didn't have any higher eds in the pilot, but it doesn't mean that it couldn't work for any sort of grade level or age group. We did have, some high school students, and I feel like the use cases would be quite similar in the higher ed space. It's just the nature of the fact that most of the schools using Chromebooks, which is where we sort of started this pilot, happen to be in the K-12 space, where in the higher ed space it tends to be more of a BYOD environment. But that said, if these schools are using devices that run the full Chrome browser and they're on Google Apps for Education, they could definitely use Google Cast in higher ed.
Yeah, I just want to jump in and also mention, we sort of are talking about this in terms of opening up the projector so that students can cast as well. What we found from the pilot users is that there are lots of other things that you can do with this. So, for instance, some teachers have both a desktop that sits on their desk and is connected to their projector, but what they really use is the laptop, maybe even their personal laptop that they bring in, and they walk around the class with that. Mm-hmm. And so if that's the setup that you're working with as a teacher, it'll work really well for you also, because then as a teacher you can actually walk around the room with your laptop and cast your screen back to your desktop no problem. So there are lots of different kind of innovative things we've seen pilot teachers do with this, and I think it's kind of up to your imagination. But I think it would work great for higher ed as well.
So with that in mind, Kyle Taylor actually put near enough that exact question in in the Q&A, but that was moreover, could the teacher accept the request from a second device then? If they're walking around with a Chromebook, one of these Asus flips in their hand, and be able to go and just accept that when they're not at the front of the screen, if they've got or front of the class with a computer attached?
Yeah, really good question. That's not available right now, but it's something we're also looking into to support. We know it'd be great if you could just use your computer and maybe even pull out your phone to accept things on the go. So we're definitely looking into that. At the moment, the requests are going to show up on the computer where the app is running.
So just a reminder to people, we are answering the Q&A through obviously the feature on the Hangout on Air, so feel free to fire these in. Just going through quite a lot of these, and these are awesome questions. Maureen, you put in there, can you cast and hang out at the same time?
Absolutely, and in fact that's what Marta and I happen to do all the time. Of course, within Google we use Hangouts as our just regular corporate video chatting service. And that's how we have a lot of our meetings. That's how we often talk to our pilot schools, and maybe you're using Hangouts too within your school. And so absolutely that's possible. You can, as a teacher, be running the Cast app on your computer, have a student casting to your app, and then also you as the teacher can be joined to a Hangout elsewhere. And so it's kind of adding an extra little wireless hop to the process, but it'll certainly work, and we've tried it ourselves and use it all the time.
Awesome. I'm just going to go back straight to Maureen's second question, which I think we can all say that it certainly can be used. So Marta, I mean, do you see this being used for PD for teachers? If they can be in a Hangout and casting?
I absolutely think that's the case. In fact, Tiffany Lucy, who's one of the people who co-presented with us, was the tech coach, if you will, from the school district that Erin Turnbach was at, the story we showcased earlier in this presentation. And she used it for PD all the time for teachers to gather ideas. So, she would always share the example of second graders coming up with lots of facts in the classroom activity. But you could totally imagine the same environment for teachers where they can collaborate and demonstrate things from their own classrooms as examples to showcase what's happening in their own classes. We didn't pilot this with adults in the format of professional development, but I think it absolutely could be used as a professional development tool, particularly for showcasing best practices in the classroom.
Awesome. And so I'm going to go back to maybe a technical one here. We've got this from Pam Murphy. If the teacher projects through an Apple TV, which will Google Cast work? Also, if the teacher uses an iPad to project, is this available? I think we've answered the first one. The second one about iOS, but the first one about Apple TV. Do you want to answer that?
Yeah, great question. So also similar to the Hangouts question, I think. But again, so however the teacher's computer is connected to the projector today, there's no difference once you start using Cast for Education. So if you do have an Apple TV hooked up to your projector, and the teacher presents his or her screen wirelessly to the Apple TV, you could still absolutely run the Cast for Education app on your computer and then open it up to students. So it's just adding an extra hop to this wireless process, but it'll work, and we would recommend that you try that out.
And I guess I'm just going to add this to this, which I didn't expect when I heard this was coming, and was the fact that obviously audio comes through as well, right? Which is a huge thing, and it's really important that that's the audio and video coming through, so not just like projecting into a Hangout in that way. But maybe taking this question from David Jones. Is it the Chromecast beta extension that you need to be pushed out? And Max, do you want to answer that one?
Yeah, so no, it's not. It's just the regular Cast extension that you have to push out. Now, again, I mentioned that with the next version of Chrome, this is actually a feature that's going to be built into Chrome, so every user of Chrome will have it by default. We still recommend pushing out the extension, though, and the reason for that is if you do have the extension as well, it'll just give you a little icon in your toolbar that makes it really easy to use. But ultimately, you're going to see the same thing no matter what. So, yeah, it's just the regular Google Cast extension that we would recommend you push out. And one more note on the audio there, since you mentioned that. What's really nice about Cast for Education is it builds on all of the different streaming advances that we've seen with Chromecast. So, for instance, if you're casting a YouTube video from the student's computer to the teacher's, what's neat is that the video will still stream to the student's computer, but then the video and audio will both stream to the teacher's. The audio will automatically mute on the student's device, so you don't have any kind of echo or anything like that. And the streaming will actually optimize it so that the audio comes through really smoothly, no matter how much bandwidth you have available. So it's really it's cool technology. It's intelligent enough to know basically how to make it a smooth stream no matter what you're trying to do.
I actually had a similar thought I wanted to add to that point of the live streaming as well, because audio, video, amazing. It's also really nice that you can actually see the cursor in real time so that students can actually point things out and demonstrate in real time what they're trying to explain.
Yeah, that was a great example of something that we learned from the pilot. It didn't used to be like that, and so in fact, if you used last time you used Chromecast was more than a few months ago, you might be surprised to see that that's now the default. Is that even if you're just casting the tab, if you're mousing over the tab, you'll be able to see the cursor come through when you're screen sharing. And the reason we added that was because that's what we heard from pilot users. So again, feedback is something that we take really seriously. This is obviously one forum to give that through these questions. But then also any feedback you send through the app is something that we track pretty closely. It actually goes straight to our inboxes, so feel free to fill them up. We love to hear it.
So I think just adding another thing, Max, so I was really glad that you added was the full screen. Casting full screen and being able not just to cast a tab, but we're talking about casting a full screen of a browser, of a browser, or also the whole computer in that way. So that's pretty awesome that that's been added. We do have another question here from David who said, can multiple students cast simultaneously? Like what we call video game mode. Max, you want to take this or me?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so this is not currently available. I like, Marta, your term video game mode, kind of that split screen that you're used to. But no, it's not available yet. That's actually, I would say, probably our first or second most common request that we've heard over the last 2 weeks. So that's definitely another thing that we're looking into now.
Yeah, and right now, if you have it as can present, it goes like the last one wins, basically. Otherwise, it's whoever you accept or deny in that moment.
So I guess just going into Trevor Beck's questions is how do you identify the students in each session to ensure only your students are added? Do you have to do it for every casting session, or can you have it set up based on a member of a class and classroom?
Yeah, so our recommendation, and there are lots of different ways to customize this, our recommendation is that you open this up and you share it just one time at the beginning of the semester. And so at the beginning of the semester, you'll add in your Google Classroom classes if you use Google Classroom. And again, if not, you can still add individuals or Google groups. And then you can set it so that students have to request each and every time that they want to cast. And then I would just save it and leave it be for the entirety of the semester as long as that's working for you. What's nice is that, first of all, if a student ever wants to cast, you can actually see who it is and accept or deny before they have access to the board. So there are no surprises. Even once they start casting, you can still see who the user is that's connected, and as a teacher, you can always X out. So if somebody starts doing something that you don't want them to do, or casting something that you wouldn't want, you can just X out of it and get back to your lesson. So the point here is to really kind of minimize the distractions and let you just keep going fluidly with what you were trying to accomplish. The other thing that I'll mention is that the Cast for Education app actually has to be open in order for it to be available to students. So if you're in class and you are doing a lesson where you might want students to cast, you can just open up that app and leave it running in the background. But if you're not, maybe you're taking a standardized test, or you're doing something where you wouldn't want anybody to cast, you can just close out of the app, and then it won't even be available to anybody. And so I think that there are a lot of different controls that you can have as a teacher to make this available only to the people that you want to, and not to the people that you don't.
So another question here from David Jones. Any plans to embed, and we're talking about the future plans now, and I can see all you guys smiling. Any plans for you to embed a dongle seems to plug into a PC Chromebook at the front of the classroom? So is there any plans to embed into a dongle? The idea of this being the fact of redundancy of plugging the actual machine into the projector, I guess.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure if I'll... let me answer the question how I think you're asking it, which is, what if you do want a piece of hardware? What if you do want to kind of disconnect your computer and walk around the classroom with it? And in that case, what we would recommend is you look into the Chromebit, which is a really interesting computer. It's actually just kind of a stick computer, so it's kind of the form factor of a Chromecast, but it actually runs the full Chrome OS operating system. And so just like you might have a Chromebook, or you might have a Chromebox on your desk, the Chromebit is just a little HDMI stick you can plug directly into the projector. And since it's just a Chrome OS device, you can run any Chrome app on it, you can run extensions, you can sign in, you can try running this in kiosk mode. And so that actually is a pretty affordable device that only costs $85 US. And so what's nice is if you are looking for a piece of hardware to use to kind of just leave at the front of the room while you walk around with your computer, that's definitely an option too. And so we've seen some schools start to experiment with that and try it out.
Yeah, and David, just to expand on your question, it seems like you're asking if the PC or Chromebook would be somewhat redundant at that point. You could argue, you might even do away with the projector in that scenario. You could just have a monitor with the Chromebit plugged into it for, $150 projector.
And I think one of the other things, a lot of people are using the Chromebits now for digital signage. So the real cool thing that we're seeing a lot of schools looking at as a possibility is that the Chromebit could be running digital signage, but that digital signage could immediately turn into that receiver as well, right, in that way. So you can show the students' work, and the teacher can put up students' work through digital signage, but then at the same time, if a flick of a switch, essentially, it could be turned into the receiver to receive students' work and casting in that way. So I'm going to answer a last couple of questions as we kind of wind down the Hangout on air here. And I guess the Kyle Taylor has just asked, is there a log of who requests access and when?
No, there's not, but that's something we can look into too.
Yeah. And I think that one of the things maybe to mention to Kyle is the fact that somebody's requesting, or if you're casting, I can always, as a teacher, I can always reject them, if I want to. So
and in fact, actually we've also gotten the question of, what if I'm not at the computer, or what if I don't want to bother with this? You can also just ignore the request and it'll go away. So if you're in the middle of something or you don't want someone to cast, just ignore it. It'll go right away after a couple of seconds, and you don't have to deal with it. But we'll definitely look into a log of who was casting and who requested.
Awesome. So maybe a couple of other things here that we've heard is, how long does that approval last for? That cast approval. So if I allow Marta to cast to my screen, how long does that last? Does that mean next time I bring it up that Marta could project automatically?
No. So it just means that for the duration of that specific time when Marta's casting, she'll have access. And so if she stops casting, or if you stop her from casting, or you just X out, she'll have to request again the next time she connects. So it's just every time you connect, you would have to request.
And maybe just throwing up another thing, which is probably one of your most requested feature would be the fact of multiple domains. How does it work with multiple domains, and what can people hope for the future as well?
Yeah, definitely. So, if you're a Google Apps for Education user, and maybe you have your students at, students.school.edu, you probably have that set up on Google Apps as a secondary domain. And secondary domains are designed so that it will just work. And we're working on making that work now. So at the moment, if you try to add a student from a secondary domain, it'll say you have to add users within your domain. So we're going to fix that up hopefully within the next few weeks. So that'll just work for secondary domains. The other thing I'll mention is if you're using Classroom or you're using Google Groups, that's often a way that you can kind of circumvent this. So you might have Classroom already set up with whitelisted domains even, and students from different domains or different organizations. If they're in your Classroom and you add the Classroom, it will just work, and that's working today. So it's definitely our intention to support all of the different setups you might have in terms of your domains and how those are managed. That's a pretty popular request. I think that's probably the biggest one right now that we're working hard on. So you'll see that soon.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things is just making sure that whitelisting is put in place, as much as possible, particularly for the classroom pieces. And that's what Amplified IT, we go through, whether it's audit or review or consultancy, guide people through this quite often. So it's not only the cast, but also just everything else that you might be sharing here. So from the other last two questions, that I've got here is the one higher ed use case, and this is from Sean Joyce again on the higher ed, but just the idea of students working with students, pairing up. Did you have any of that during your pilots, Marta, of actually the students getting the receiver, or the particularly the Google Cast for Education app?
Yeah, no, not in particular, but we have gotten a lot of requests for what we call two-way casting, where not just students be able to cast to each other, because I know some teachers might have management concerns around that, but also for the teacher to be able to cast to the students. So it's definitely something we're looking into. But more similar to, I think, what this example is showcasing from Sean is what we saw was that students would sort of co-teach a particular group or present to a particular group of peers by casting their screen to the front of the room to demonstrate their understanding or explain a concept. So it could be really great to have students in higher ed doing that as well if they want to present to the class or share to the front of the room. But you could theoretically have students download a receiver, I guess, but we did not have that as part of our pilots, no.
So I guess just to tie that into a best practice, for those of you that obviously block apps from the App Store, from the Chrome Web Store for students, then you might want to go in there and block the Google Cast for Education app. And that's the one that is on the screen here, number 2, stage number 2. So then students don't download that themselves, from that piece. So if you do go ahead and block, a lot of schools have got it set up that they go and block certain apps from the Chrome Web Store. Then again, for the next school year, that might be something you want to block if you're not wanting students to actually be able to receive other students' casts, right?
Yeah.
And
the other tool we see a lot of schools use for sort of sharing, not as much in real time screen sharing or wireless projection, but just sharing content from the student's device to a teacher or from student to student, is the Share to Classroom extension itself. So I know that's a separate product, but that's also one that we hear a lot of people using when they want that type of collaboration in the classroom.
So one more thing on Share to Classroom. What's neat about that is that when we launched that, we really envisioned it as a way to make it easy for teachers to distribute content to students. And so basically, Share to Classroom lets the teacher take whatever web page they're currently on and push it out to students, so the same web page will open on each of the student devices. We also built in this feature so that kids could send websites back to the teachers. And what's great about it is that it turns out that over 60% of the pages that are passed back and forth are actually coming from student to teacher. So we've seen a lot of these tools, however we envision them, are really kind of used in ways to make the classes more collaborative. And I think that's one of the things that led us to Cast for Education, and trying to build something that's more student-centric and making more of the resources in the classroom available to the kids.
Awesome, and I really do appreciate Marta and Max coming on here, and I appreciate everyone watching this Hangout on Air. I know that we did say we'd be about 45 minutes on here, so and we've gone through all the different questions, and I think one of the pieces I would just say and ask maybe both of you, is this the beginning of the CAS for Education app and CAS for Education service? I.e., can we expect more features to come?
Absolutely. You know, right now we're getting ready for back to school. Obviously, that that happens at different times for everybody. You know, I think when you see the next Chrome version roll out, that'll be kind of the first step to take this out of beta. And then we're going to absolutely keep adding a bunch of these features that, you know, we've heard you request today, and over the last couple of weeks, we'll be adding more of those to the app. So definitely keep an eye out. Try it out today, see how it works for you today, and we'll keep adding more.
Awesome. So one of the big things that just everyone knows is you having that roadmap of you moving over to the cloud and moving over to Google Apps. And I think that one of the big things here is just seeing how this can change. This not only changes the ways that students and teachers interact in your classroom, but it also changes the technology that you actually need to spend some money on. You know, with casting, receiving, the fact that this is free is fantastic. So a big thing I would say is think about how this can be deployed, making sure that you do set up, you know, push out the CAS for Education app. Again, the other parts of the beta, you know, being able to, having to go in there and changing the flags as you start back to school is not going to be needed as long as you're on the latest version of Chrome. So that's one of the biggest things I would say to people to make sure that they're on or check is that the latest version of Chrome is rolled out not only, you know, to your Chromebooks, but then also to your hardware, you know, the Windows and other devices that you've got and you manage within the school. Any last words, Marta, do you know that you want to share with people?
I would just say please, please, please send your feedback in the send feedback button. We can't say that enough because I know we got through a lot of questions here on this Hangout. I'm sure other colleagues of yours will have other questions or opinions or thoughts on the product as well, but that's our way to have our ear to the ground ongoing regardless of these Hangouts or interactions with you all in person. So please, please, please send us your thoughts and send feedback.
Awesome. Well, thanks both of you for working on this and also jumping on this Hangout on Air, and hopefully I'll speak to you soon.
Thank you.
Bye.